Peace Adotoro, and I'm here interviewing Ruth Haye. Both her sons have sickle cell anemia. Ruth is going to share her experiences as a mother with children with sickle cell. And this is Ruth.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to ask a few questions, and she's going to tell us all about her experiences. Ruth, my first question to you is, how did you find out your sons had sickle cell anemia?
Well, with Joshua, I have two sons, Joshua and James, and Joshua was screened at birth, and we found out that he had sickle cell anemia. We were surprised because I knew I had the trait. My husband didn't have the trait, and he was tested, and they found that we were told that he doesn't have the trait, so we weren't expecting to have a child with sickle cell anemia. So when Joshua was born, even though he was delighted to have as my first son, we were surprised and slightly upset to find out that he had a condition that we weren't aware of. So, and then for James, there's 25% chance of every time you have a child for them to have sickle cell. But when he was born, for 2 weeks, there's a part of the blood called the fetal hemoglobin, and it showed up that he didn't have sickle cell. It didn't come up. But then after 2 weeks, the fetal hemoglobin was replaced by normal hemoglobin, which is part of the blood, and it indicated that he did have sickle cell. So we had two children with sickle cell anemia.
My second question to you is, once you found out your sons had sickle cell, what were your thoughts? Well, I think you've actually just answered that question in the first one. It's just like your thoughts of how you would, did you have any sort of thoughts of how you would raise the children?
Well, when we found out that Joshua had sickle cell, it was something we didn't know a lot about. I have a cousin in Canada who has sickle cell, but as she's in Canada, I don't have a lot of relationship with her. So it was a process of learning quickly. And I was very protective to Joshua because I didn't know what I could do, what I couldn't do. And the first sign of any problems, we were rushing up to the hospital. So many times we may have gone up there more than we needed to, just through out of ignorance. So it was very much a learning curve, finding out how we could help him, what it was all about, what it meant to us, and of course what it would mean to him as a child growing up.
Thank you. My third question is, what was some of the challenges you faced as a mother of two boys with sickle cell anemia? I mean, it's bad enough having one, but then having two.
Yes. When they were small, they didn't have a lot of problems with their sickling. When they were babies, they had swollen fingers and swollen toes. While, especially when James was at junior school, he had a lovely time where he was pain-free and trouble-free. And then, of course, he hit puberty and in high school. So we had a lot of challenges with the school's understanding what his condition was, because we call it the silent illness, because if you break your arm, you have a plaster. People can see without asking the question, what is the problem? If you cut yourself, you have blood flowing. So people will see. But with sickle cell, it's internal. And to look at the boys, they look extremely healthy. So you wouldn't indicate there was anything wrong with them. And they could be sitting with you 1 minute talking, and the next minute a crisis could happen internally. And then the person who doesn't understand what's happening will think, A, that they're making it up to get out of activity or a lesson, or B, they'll be puzzled as to what is wrong with them because they don't understand. So we had the issues of educating the teachers, informing them what to look out for, setting up care plans in the school so that if there was a crisis, they knew what to do, making sure they got extra help for when they missed school and so forth. And it was very challenging. It was very challenging because it spent a lot of time going back and forth, putting things in place. But once it was in place, it was just about monitoring and communicating with the teachers to constantly remind them. And sometimes they may have teachers that are supply teachers, I believe they call them, who know anything. So you have to go in again and reinforce. And when they were doing things such as PE, we had to ensure that they weren't sent out in the shorts and the t-shirt in the freezing cold weather. That they were allowed to wear tracksuit and gloves and scarves. And even though it may make them a little bit, sort of seem a little bit different, but it was for their care, benefit.
Fantastic. We've got an iPhone here, we've got to get the password.
Okay, let's get through this, not a problem. Technology.
Yeah.
There we are, I should be able to move on there.
Have you got any effective ways you use to manage your child's crisis?
Yes, we have a procedure.
Yeah.
When we believe they have a crisis, we go through the routine of checking for temperature.
Yeah.
That could be infection.
Mm-hmm.
We question them about where the pain is,
Right.
and we've taught them to explain in words what the pain is, because you can't see pain.
Yes.
So, we tell them to use words like, is it throbbing, is it sharp, what kind of pain is it, so that you get a picture, find out where it is, give them plenty of fluids and pain control, keep them warm and comfort them.
Yeah.
And that is the procedure. After going through all those things, if the pain happens to travel to the chest, we call it the chest syndrome, we have to be very careful, because there's a blockage in the lungs, and sort of not being able to get oxygen in the body can become very dangerous. Right. So once they have problems with sickling here, straight to the hospital we go. We call the ambulance, take them straight to the hospital. If the other procedures has not kicked in and is not relieving their pain, and it's just increasing, and depending on where the pain may be, we take them to the hospital. And at the hospital we have open access for the children's ward, where we can go in, we just say, it's James Haye, he has sickle cell anemia. They say, come up, we just go straight up. And unlike the other parents, we don't wait in a queue.
That's good.
Because they know that they have to be seen straight away, and there's a protocol set up for the children there.
That's very good. That's very good. Your children having sickle cell, has it affected your relationship with your partner in any way?
It can put a strain, because there are lots of times when we have planned to do things and we have to cancel if they've suddenly become ill for different reasons. We find that we have to communicate a lot more, because if I've been with the children at the hospital, the doctors, I have to ensure that my husband knows what's happened, what's decided, or what they've found out. We've had to do a lot of learning together about the children's sickle cell, both physically as well as mentally. And there'll be times when it can be very demanding, because as you say, I have two. Yes. And there've been occasions when both of them have been sick. Wow. So my husband's taken care of one and I've taken care of one, or my sister comes down or my mum comes down. So having a close family unit does help. And it's important to have time together with your partner, because they could feel isolated, and I'm blessed to have
You're a super mum. You're what I call a super mum.
I don't know about that, but I'm blessed to have a wonderful husband.
It's a big challenge to have just children that we call normal, but to have children that have got, a disability like sickle cell, it's a big challenge. And for you to be able to go through it with two children, I think you're doing a wonderful job.
God has really helped us, because you adapt to whatever situation you have. I mean, if I had children that had no legs, you would adapt to that situation, Yeah. So as parents, you don't know what you're going to have, as far as children are concerned. So you have to go one day at a time. Yeah.
There's one question that's actually off the record. It's because you've just mentioned, I put a question up on my Facebook about people screening before marriage. And what would you say to someone that, say for instance, they just found out that they've, the partners are over AA or SS? Would you support them, or would you say, these are the implications, call it quits here, or would you?
My personal opinion would be that if I was talking to somebody who had just found out that situation, I would say to them, communicate, talk about the situation, talk about how you feel as a couple, find out as much as you can about what sort of things you're going to be faced with. And then once you have all the information, then only then can you make a judgment. I mean, when we didn't know Joshua had sickle cell. We knew that if we had another child, there was a possibility, 25% chance, that son or daughter could have sickle cell.
Yeah.
But we didn't want Joshua to be an only child. We come from a very large family. So we made a personal decision that we would take the chance. And, James was born and he was a wonderful baby and he's still a wonderful child. But the only difference is that he has sickle cell, you know. He could have been born blind, he could have been born deaf, all those sort of conditions. So it doesn't matter what the conditioner is, it depends on how strong the relationship is.
Yeah, that's very important.
And, many people say they wait until they know they can afford and cope with children. You can never afford, you can never know what you're going to be able to do until you're in the situation. So it has to be the individual choice. Because at the end of the day, when everybody else has gone home, it's down to the two of you.
Exactly. My next question is, have you or your children suffered any form of discrimination, or how would you handle the stigma in relation to sickle cell?
We haven't personally come across any discrimination because of sickle cell. We've come across sort of ignorance from even some of the professionals about what they suffer mentally as well as physically. Sickle cell, like any condition, all conditions have a certain amount of stigma, but it depends how you deal with it. And we always encourage the boys that you're no less than a person because you have a certain condition. If it's not the same, but if you look at people who are Paralympics, now if a lot of them decided, well, because I've got only half a body, I'm not going to achieve anything, they would never do anything.
Exactly.
So it's our role to encourage them internally to say, come on now, look outside the box. Yes, you have a condition that needs a little bit more managing, but you can achieve. No matter what people say, you go for your goal. Don't let stigma or anything else or labels stop you from doing what you have to do. That's just the way you are. You can't change it until they find a cure. So you take it every day and you grab it and you say, well, I'm going to do the best that I can. And that's all that you can do. The other things will only change when people become educated.
Exactly.
And that's hopefully what
that's what my job is. Yeah.
That's right.
Have you actually, do you know how your two sons feel, James and
there have been
Joshua?
times when I know that if they had a choice, they wouldn't have wanted to be born with sickle cell. Because nobody wants pain.
No.
Nobody wants to be disadvantaged. No. Nobody wants to do more than they have to do anything. But they have come to terms with it. And there have been times when they've been low. There have been times when it's been difficult. But I can proudly say that they have grabbed life with both hands. And Joshua, when he was told he would never go to college, never go to university because of his condition, because the time he's been off school and whatever, he's gone through college. He's gone through university and he's got his degree and he's working. And, and I stood there at his, the day when he graduated and I sat there, and when they called up his name, it flashed back all the obstacles that we had
been a proud moment.
All the obstacles we went through to get to that point. And, and I stood up, and when he was there and he received his certificate, I stood up as a very proud mother and I said, yes. We've done it.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they said, you will never know. You will never know what he had gone through to get there. Yeah. But I'm proud of him.
Yes, fantastic. My last question to you, do you feel that there's enough support for parents and children with sickle cell?
There is some support. There are some very good specialist sickle cell nurses. There are some very good consultants and doctors, but there are gaps. There's not really enough support or understanding at schools. And I think that the support should start from the infants right through. You tend to find that they sort of kick in at high school. But, parents are struggling with children and infants and they don't know where to turn. There's not enough information of charities that are there that can support the parents. And it took me nearly 15, 18 years to find out things that Joshua could have benefited from, that now James is benefiting from. But Joshua, unfortunately, had to go through that, on the rough side of the mountain, so to speak. But there needs to be more support for parents. there needs to be more support in the school and more knowledge and teaching in the school so people understand what the condition is. And there needs to be more support to remove the stigma around the condition. That children are not seen to be handicapped, so to speak, because they have the condition. They're more than capable as long as they get the encouragement, the understanding, and the obstacles are removed, because they have enough obstacles. Our boys and our children have enough obstacles to cope with in life without to have additional ones. So our role as parents, I mean, as I often say to the doctors, the children are sick, they can't fight for themselves. This is our role. So our role is to share the knowledge we've gained with other parents so that they can obtain the information and help the children and let their children benefit from it. So I hope that even from this, a little bit of knowledge that I've passed on will encourage more support to be available for children with sicklers and to hopefully find a cure. And one other thing, that diabetes is recognised as a lifelong illness. And you don't have to pay for medication. But for sickle cell, it's not recognised. And even as adults, they have to pay for medication, even though we know that there is, at the moment, no cure. So there's an imbalance. Now, whether it's because diabetes is, mainly only after, for one type of people, I don't know. But sickle cell should be on the same level. So that's one thing that we'd like to fight for, so that it's recognised it is a lifelong illness that should have benefits just as diabetes.
That's very educational. That's one thing I didn't actually think about, so that's another fight on my hands. So thank you very much, Ruth.
You're more than welcome.
This is a real life experience from Ruth, who has 2 boys that have sickle cell, and I can tell you, I'm actually looking at James because he's recording this, and he is a fantastic and a lovely boy. So we'll say goodbye today, but our next interview will probably just be after Christmas. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.